So yesterday, I had my afternoon all planned out. I was going to do some research on a trial I want to cover. Then I got an email from Saul Goodman.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman.
Not that Saul Goodman. But he told me to turn on this hearing. And I thought the courts were closed, but it's a Texas criminal hearing. A motion for a continuance, but it's full of judges and they're testifying. And I'm like, what on earth is this craziness? Needless to say, my afternoon plans were postponed, and I now know more than I ever thought possible about the Mason County, Texas courthouse. I know, yeah, she's talking again, and I'm going to keep talking for a few minutes, but I promise you this case is going to blow your mind because I got sucked in yesterday like you would not believe. So the courthouse in Mason County, Texas was built between 1909 and 1910 for a whopping $39,786. Wow. And I'm looking at the photos of it and I had this weird sense of familiarity. Like I couldn't understand it. And it's in Texas. I don't think I've ever been to Texas other than an airport. And then I read the Wikipedia page and the courthouse was built by this Georgia-based architect who's known for designing courthouses across the South, especially in Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And I looked and I've actually been into multiple courthouses that he designed. Random cool fact. Anyways, so the important thing is the courthouse in Mason County, Texas is like the centerpiece of this small town. Everything's kind of built around the courthouse. It's the type of small town where everybody knows everybody's business and everybody knows what happens like immediately. So on this chilly night back in February 2021, there was a home not far from the courthouse caught on fire. Of course, word spreads quick, everybody knows. But then right after that, the courthouse catches on fire. WTF. Courthouses don't usually catch on fire, but this one's old as dirt, so, you know. But it's not one of those small fires like you read about in the news all the time. Oh my gosh, there's a fire, and it ends up being one room and a little like charred ceiling tiles. No, this is like full on, full engulfed, complete inferno, destructive fire. Of course, the townspeople, not Mayberry, Mason, were stunned and devastated to see like this historic landmark, the center of their town, like charred to rubble. There were hundreds of people gathered around watching it burn, videos, photos, all that good stuff. It didn't take long for investigators. Well, it took them a long time to put it out, that's for sure. Massive fire. All that was left was pretty much the shell. It was block on the outside. So, of course, that was still standing, but everything wood and anything else on the inside was gone. But it didn't take long for the investigators to figure out that there was an accelerant used, and they labeled it as arson. And also a suspect quickly emerged, and his name was Nicholas Jarrett Miller. He's now 44 years old, so that was a couple years ago. You do the math. It turns out Miller had a case in front of the district court judge. There's only one for the county. That's, what we're talking about here. The following day, he also had a connection to the home that caught fire down the street that night. So, Mason was located several days later driving his maroon F-350 Dually by Georgetown Police. It started in Williamson County and continued up Interstate 35. The vehicle was spiked several times, but Duallys are tough. Before it finally stopped just south of Waco, Texas. Waco. Ooh, nothing too crazy, right? Except Mr. Miller decided to live stream his arrest on Facebook Live because, of course, he did.
Facebook, you could have stopped this shit too a long fucking time ago. You recognize that correspondence, Mark Zuckerberg, you punk bitch. Yeah, all that correspondence in Messenger. You recognize that shit? Hang yourself, Mark, you punk bitch. The you got all this shit in sync for and can't do nothing about it. Can't protect your fucking body. You ain't doing shit, you punk bitch. God damn, choppers. Choppers. And look, well, how this is going to end, but I guarantee you, we'll see if I pull over with my hands high, see what happens there. They tell me my kids are all right. That means I gotta drop my hands. Y'all understand that, right? That means I gotta drop my hands. Got you. Hey, but wait. I got a gun. Can I shut them? These motherfuckers. Damn. I got a gun. I got a gun. I'm not going to. Fuck. I'm ducking under.
He was obviously taken into custody and initially charged with arson, burglary of a building, possession of a firearm by a felon, and evading arrest. Now, this was February 5th, 2021. He's been in custody since that time. His trial was finally set for next week, a year and a half after the incident. Now, today, the 27th hour, his defense is asking for a delay to the start of the trial because new evidence has come to light that was not provided by the prosecution. Now, this evidence is quotes made by these judges who are in this hearing that we're about to watch in a story published by a reporter for the Texas Association of Counties about the origin of the fire, which was listed as undeterminable by the fire investigators. So there is a link in the article, a link to the article in the description of the video, as well as a lot of other links for all of the research that I did to figure out what on earth this story was about. And so this hearing is simply to provide evidence on why the defense needs a continuance, but it also provides a lot of background on what's going on, and it's pretty interesting. So here we go.
There we go. Good morning, Mr. Miller. Court will call cause number 19-4833 and cause numbers 21-4845, 4846, 4847, 4848, and 4849. Each of them styled the state of Texas versus Nicholas Jarrett Miller. For purposes of the defense motion for continuance, what say the parties?
State's ready for the motion, Judge.
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Yes, Your Honor. We filed this motion for continuance. Just a little bit of background. As the court's aware, we've been working on discovery on this matter. We had the court appointed an investigator for the defense to go through and investigate these the different areas in this case. And our investigator has been doing so diligently. Last week, both me and my co-counsel, Ms. Neal, were out of the office sick with COVID. But while we were out, the state forwarded us a news article that had been recently published by the Texas Association of Counties. And that article quoted a lot of new information that seemingly came from county officials. And that discovery had not been provided to us. And that discovery, the things that are mentioned in the article are things that our investigator, we need to investigate before we go to trial on this matter. A lot of it has to do with restitution, where it came from, et cetera, whether or not people that provided money to the Texas Association of Counties or for the courthouse restoration. Need to see if anyone on the jury panel that has been, or the jury panel list that has been provided to us is a part of that. And number two are also our investigators going through comments on the news articles to see if anyone from the jury pool has any opinions on that. Further, there was some evidence in the article from county officials that had not been provided to the defense. There's evidence in there, newly discovered evidence that directly contradicts the fire marshal's report that was provided to us by the state. So we are asking for a continuance in order to track down these new leads, this newly provided discovery, Your Honor, so that we can be prepared to provide a defense for our client.
Let me ask you a quick question, if I may.
Yes, Your Honor.
Explain to me the contradiction between the source of the fire, between the fire marshal and the comments by the elected officials.
Yes, Your Honor. Let me find the. There are two quotes, and I believe I did attach the article as Exhibit A to the motion. Did you get a copy of the motion, Your Honor?
I do. I have it in front of me.
Okay. So I am looking. It looks like the pages aren't numbered, but I believe it's the second page. And the very bottom, it says, the district judge's office burned first. That's at the bottom of that. And then if you go down to the bottom of the third page, there's a kind of the middle of that paragraph. It says fire investigators determined the fire began in his office. And that is referring to 452nd District Judge Rob Hoffman, who the court is aware was taken off of the case, and you were made the presiding judge in place of him. Where that information came from, I don't know. According to and Ms. Alschweid, correct me if I'm wrong, but according to the state fire marshal's report, it's inconclusive where the fire started, other than it was somewhere on the second floor. So if there are eyewitnesses who state that it started in that judge's office, I think that's important to know and to track down the source of that info.
Ms. Alschweid?
Judge, I don't disagree with what Mr. Neal has stated in that regard on what the evidence will be. We anticipate the evidence will be at trial. And I certainly have never provided the fire marshal's report to anyone other than the defense and the previous defense attorneys in this case. I don't know who else the fire marshals, provided that report to. And in order to try to move forward with this, we have the witnesses available if Mr. Neal wants to, ask those witnesses where they got that information, because I don't have that information. And the judges that are here on the Zoom have not given a statement to any law enforcement officer or any prosecutor about the origination of the fire that I'm aware of, Judge.
Mr. Neal?
Yes, sir. We would like to ask a few questions of some of the witnesses if the court would allow it. And yet we don't know. We would like to figure out how this information, where this information came from, and if there's additional discovery that we're entitled to.
Who would you like to call?
I guess we just take them in order from the article. The defense would call the Honorable Judge Rob Hoffman first, Your Honor.
Judge Hoffman, are you online?
I'm here. Rebecca's moved away and I'm at my desk.
Okay. You please raise your right hand. In the matter before the court, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. May proceed.
And Your Honor, if it's all right with the court, Mr. Neal and I discussed that I would be questioning the Honorable Judge Hoffman if the court is comfortable with that, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning, Judge Hoffman. I know you and I haven't had an opportunity to meet, but my name is Sarah Neal. I'm a defense attorney and I'm appointed as the second chair in this case. And I have some questions for you this morning. just for the purposes of the record, I think we all know, but for the purposes of the record, are you currently the elected judge of the 452nd Judicial District Court?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, and again, this is mostly for the purposes of the record, there are no other district courts in Mason County, correct?
That's correct.
So the 452nd is the only district court that covers Mason County, right?
Correct.
And if you know, are all of the causes that we're here for today, the state of Texas versus Nicholas Miller, which would include cause number 214845, 214846, 214847, 214848, and 214849 are all assigned to the 452nd Judicial District Court, correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
And to clarify, and I believe it's in the court's files, but just for a point of clarification, back in 2021, you recused yourself from these cases. Is that correct?
I notified the presiding regional judge either the day of the fire or the day after that I would recuse myself from all proceedings. And then upon, of course, I guess it took a while for the cases to be indicted or whatever, but I don't know when officially that was done, but I notified the judge immediately.
And to your knowledge, Judge Abels did first initially appoint himself to preside over these cases, if you know. Do you know?
I believe that's correct, but I can't verify that.
And if you know, did Judge Abels ultimately appoint the Honorable Judge Emerson to preside over all of those causes?
That's my understanding.
But to your knowledge, all of the causes still remain in the 452nd Judicial District Court, correct?
I really don't have any knowledge of that one way or the other.
You have no personal knowledge whether or not the cases are still in the 452nd?
Well, it appears so, since we're here today and I heard the judge call the case, and it's Judge Emerson, and he called them under those styles, but I have not had any interaction with any of those cases since the date of the fire.
I understand. Thank you. Is it your testimony today that you came into the knowledge that the fire started in your office on the date of the fire, which was February 4th of 2021?
I have never been under the impression that the fire started in my office. My understanding has always been that it started in my office suite, which includes the adult probation office, it has always been my understanding that the fire started in the adult probation office, which is in my office suite, but not my individual office within the office suite.
And when you say your office suite, where was at the time of this fire, where was your office suite located?
Well, it's been reconfigured through reconstruction. There were 4 offices on the second floor of the county courthouse in the southwest corner. The southwest quadrant included 4 offices, which were in my office suite.
And when you say your office suite, you just mentioned that adult probation was included in those offices. What other offices were included in there?
From east to west, there was a vault immediately above the main entrance to the courthouse on the south side going west, my office going west, the court coordinator's office going west, the adult probation office, and then on the west side of the courthouse, north of the adult probation, is the juvenile probation office.
And when you say that it was, and I'm not trying to misquote what you said, but I just can't recall the exact words you used. So please clarify if I'm misstating it. But when you said that it was your understanding that it happened in your office suite, but specifically the adult probation office, how did you come into that knowledge?
I think that was just the general understanding that that's the impression I was under, and the understanding that I had from the date of the fire event and every day subsequent to that. I think that was the chatter, the discussions, as that unfolded. That was my understanding.
Did you have an opportunity to see the fire actually occurring on February 4th of 2021?
I did. When I was notified from dispatch that the fire was occurring, I walked out into the street in front of my home and I could see the fire. I, at some point, did go to the courthouse square and observe the fire.
And at that initial point when you saw the fire, were you able to make any determination on where the fire originated?
Not from my observations, no.
After the fire was ultimately extinguished, did you have an opportunity to review any of the damage yourself?
No. Actually, I believe it was over 2 years before I entered the courthouse.
So, as you said earlier, coming into this conclusion that this fire started in your office suite, specifically adult probation, was mostly just from local chatter or an understanding of the local community that you came into knowledge of because you're a member of the local community. Is that a fair representation?
I would say 100% of the information I received was due to that local chatter.
And do you recall any specific instances of this local chatter coming directly from anybody affiliated with the fire investigator in this case, or the arson investigation in this case?
No, absolutely not. I've had no contact with any fire investigation.
Did any of this I'm sorry, was there something else? Did I catch you off?
Officers or personnel, however you want to classify them.
Did you have any information given to you from any other law enforcement entities regarding this fire?
No.
And I know earlier you testified that dispatch contacted you the night of the fire, but that was just to let you know that the fire was occurring, correct?
As far as I can remember, I think, I don't even remember who the dispatcher was, but it was a female, and I think she just said the courthouse is on fire, or words to that effect.
Have you had an opportunity to review this article from the Texas Association of Counties?
Yes.
And in the article, I want to direct your attention. I don't know if you happen to have a copy of it there in front of you, and if you don't, I apologize. But I'm looking at what is the bottom of page 3. There's a paragraph there, and I'll just read it in for clarity, but it starts, the 452nd District Court Judge Rob Hoffman, who serves Mason County and 4 others, also becomes emotional talking about the fire. Fire investigators determined the fire began in his office. Because the suspect in the case was set to have a hearing in his court the following day, and a home of one of the suspect's relatives was also on fire that night, Hoffman had suspicions about who was responsible for the fire right away. He also knew he had to be on alert for his and his family's safety. Judge, my question on this is, did you at any time report to anyone your initial suspicions of who may be responsible for the fire?
Yes.
Who did you report them to?
I believe, of course, it's difficult for me to remember because we're talking about a long time ago.
Sure.
I think at some point when I understood that the suspect's relative's home was on fire, as well as the courthouse, and then thinking through things, I guess, with the emotion of the event, while I was driving down to the courthouse square, I kind of had suspicions, as I've indicated in the article.
And who did you relay that to? What your suspicions were?
When I was at the at some point when I was some point that evening, and I'm not sure exactly when, I called the Texas Ranger, Joel Timms.
Just a quick note about the Texas Rangers, because I don't think a lot of people realize exactly what it is that they do. They're like the investigative agency for the whole entire state. They're like the FBI for the state, kind of, but not quite. Like in Florida, they have the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. In Georgia, they have the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And those are state-level law enforcement agencies. And they come in and they assist the local agencies when necessary. So when he was contacting someone, he wasn't contacting the local sheriff, the local, I'm not sure what they have, deputies. He was contacting someone at the state level to give them information about his suspicions.
And I figured he was aware of the fire. I don't remember if he was or not, but I told him what my concerns were and thoughts were.
Do you have any idea if that phone call would have been recorded?
I don't know. I did not.
I understand. Thank you. Did you have any follow-up conversations with Ranger Joel Timms regarding this event?
I do not remember, not to my knowledge.
And did you provide to anyone copies of dockets or court settings on any cases that Mr. Miller may have had pending in your court?
No, as I've stated already, either that night or sometime during the next 24 hours, I contacted Judge Abels to indicate to him that I would have to recuse myself from the case under the circumstances. And I have not had any interaction with any case file or any document subsequent to that. I believe even the recusals were signed by the court coordinator and not myself.
And my question, and I'm not suggesting that you did anything on any of the cases. My question more is specifically on this comment in it. And again, it's not a direct quote to you, but it's in this paragraph. Because the suspect in the case was set to have a hearing in his court the following day, and a home of one of the suspect's relatives was also on fire that night, Hoffman had suspicion, and it goes on. But not on pending cases that are going on or these cases, but during any of this time after the fire, did you ever, in your discussion with Ranger Timms, anyone else with law enforcement, tell them specifically that Mr. Miller had a court date set for the next calendar date in your court, if you recall?
I do not believe that I had a discussion with any law enforcement officer subsequent to my discussion with Ranger Timms. And I do not remember if I told Ranger Timms at the time of the phone call I had with him on the night of the event, whether the suspect was set for court in my court the next day or not. I don't remember. Now, of course, we had court the next day and his case was on the docket, but I think we just understood that he wasn't there and didn't hear the case. But as far as law enforcement officers, I do not remember that I had a discussion with any law enforcement officer at all, except for, as I've said, Ranger Timms.
Do you recall whether or not you realized that Mr. Miller had a court date the day after the fire when you were presiding over that docket? Or do you know if you independently recalled that the night of the fire?
Oh, I independently recalled it the night of the fire. Well, let me make sure. I believe that's correct. No, I'm pretty sure that I remembered that evening when things were going through my head that he had a hearing in our court the next day.
And I know that I'm not trying to just beat a dead horse. I just need clarity, so I apologize. But they in this TAC article on the next page, at the top of page 4, there is a quote that is attributed to you. It says, it made me have a great concern that our court was being targeted and perhaps me personally. if you recall, did you express that sentiment to Ranger Timms when you contacted him the night of the fire?
I don't recall that I expressed that sentiment to him. I think things were working so fast. I don't remember that. No, I it was kind of linear. Things were popping into my head, and I think it came one at a time because if I do not believe I expressed that to him, but honestly, I just can't remember for sure.
I understand. Thank you. And would you agree with me that you are not a litigant to any of these causes that are pending in the 452nd against Mr. Miller? And the cause numbers again are 214845, 214846, 214847, 214844, and 214849.
I am not a litigant in those causes.
And when did someone, if someone did, contact you from the Texas Association of Counties? When did anyone contact you regarding a possible article?
I'm going to say that was probably 6 weeks to 2 months ago.
And in your well, that's assuming, did you have any conversations with Julie Chang, the author of this article?
Yes.
And in your conversations with Ms. Chang, did it ever come up that these cases were still pending?
I don't know if that was specifically brought up or not. And I'm going to say that, yes, Ms. Chang, you're correct. Mm-hmm.
Did you request Ms. Chang delay publishing this article until after the trials and those causes that we previously mentioned were over?
No.
I'll pass the witness.
Judge Hoffman, just a couple of questions. When you got to the square that night, how long did it take you to get there from your home?
Probably about 5 minutes or less.
And when you arrived at the courthouse square, was the courthouse fully engulfed?
Yes, after the dispatcher called me, as I said, I walked out into the street with my family to observe the fire, and I made the determination that at that point I was not going to go to the square, and so I arrived fairly late to the scene.
Okay. And when you arrived at the scene, about how many people would you estimate, or could you tell us how many people and where those people were in relation to the fire?
I would say there were hundreds of people at the fire by the time I went, because I had not planned on going initially. Of course, there were multiple firefighters fighting the fire, and there were just folks observing everywhere, okay, as far as I could tell, encircling the square. And then, of course, there were law enforcement folks managing traffic and, just what you would expect. But I would say well over a couple of hundred folks.
And for purposes of the record, Judge, could you describe how the courthouse square is laid out in Mason compared to other courthouses and how the traffic flow works around that courthouse?
Well, it's a 2-block square. I do know that's how we define it, which means it's, instead of being one block surrounded by buildings, it's the square courthouse yard includes 2 blocks. So on the north and south side, there are 2 blocks worth of the city facing the courthouse yard, and on the east and west side, there is 1 block facing each side. So it's probably a couple of acres, this actual yard for the square, and there are businesses surrounding the square. It's a wide street and a big yard with a small courthouse.
And is the yard of the courthouse contained by a rock wall?
Yes.
And were the people that you described inside the rock wall or outside the rock wall?
Well, there were I don't think anybody was inside the rock wall because the firefighters, to the best of my recollection, were outside of the rock wall, but in the street. And then there were no persons that were just casual observers, even in the street. I think they were all beyond the street on the sidewalks away from the fire.
And in regard to the reporter that contacted you about the story, did she indicate anything about whose idea it was to write the article?
She certainly did not know, or not to my knowledge, or not to my recollection. I'm sorry.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
I have no further questions for Judge Hoffman, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge Hoffman.
Are you going to address the subpoenas for next week at some point, Judge Emerson?
I will after this hearing, yes.
Okay, so I'll stick around. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses?
I think you're on mute, Oliver.
I am, and my mouse was frozen. Sorry. We would call Judge Harden.
Judge Harden, please raise your right hand. In the matter before the court, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do.
Thank you. May proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Judge Harden.
Morning.
Could you state for the record your name, please, first of all?
Yes, my name is Krita Cherie Harden. I go by my middle name, Cherie.
And how are you employed, ma'am?
I am the current Mason County judge.
Okay. How long have you been the Mason County judge?
Since January 1st, 2023.
And how were you employed before that, do you recall, if you recall?
Yes, sir. I became an employee of Mason County, May 1st, 2017, as the administrative assistant to then County Judge Jerry Bearden.
And do you recall speaking with, or did you ever speak with a Julie Chang regarding an article in the Texas Association of Counties?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall when that was?
Not the exact date, but 6 weeks to 2 months ago in reference to this particular article.
Okay. And were you aware when this article was going to be published?
No, not the exact timing. No.
Did you know about when?
Yes, I had an indication that it would be published in the fall publication.
Okay. And just sir, for clarification, because I don't know either, are you a member of the Texas Association of Counties, or is your office?
Mason County is a member, yes.
Okay. And can you explain to me how that works? As you're the county judge, are y'all under contract with the Texas Association of Counties? What does that mean that it's a member? Mason County is a member.
We pay dues to be a part of the association.
Okay. Now, have you read the article that we're speaking about today?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And after reading it, are you aware of some quotes in there regarding the cost of the rebuilding of the courthouse and where the funding came from, etc.?
Yes, sir.
Do you know, did you give that information to Ms. Chang, or did she get that from somewhere else? Do you know?
I may have given her information in generalities of how the courthouse project is being funded. Yes.
Okay. And are you aware if any of that information was provided to the district attorney's office or to law enforcement as part of the investigation in these Mr. Miller's cases?
I am unaware.
Okay. But Did you personally give any of that information to the district attorney's office?
No, not to the district attorney's office. No.
Okay. Or to law enforcement in Mason County?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of, well, you said you've read the article. Would you agree that there are a couple of quotes in there that state where the fire allegedly originated?
Yes.
Did you give those quotes to Miss Chang?
I did not.
Okay. Do you have personal knowledge of where the fire originated?
I do not.
Okay. Have you been shown the state fire marshal's report on the burning of the courthouse?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. Is your office in possession of the restoration plans of the courthouse?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if those have been given to the district attorney's office for discovery purposes?
I am unaware if they've been given to the district attorney's office.
Okay. In this article, it mentions that it states that to restore the courthouse, they did not have to dip into the county's coffers, but that it came from state and then also some private individuals. Do you recall that in the article?
I do. Yes, sir.
And do you know, does the county keep a list of who these private individuals are who donated money for the recovery funds?
No, sir. The county does not keep a record of that. There was a group formed locally who collected donations on behalf of the courthouse rebuild project, and they are the keeper of that information.
Okay. And then, as county judge, do you sit in on the commissioners' meetings, county commissioners?
I do.
Okay. And you recall in here, there's well, and you may not have been the county judge at this time, but it says that shortly after the fire, there was a meeting with the commissioners and the Texas Association of Counties. Do you recall that?
I do not.
Okay. Were you at such a meeting?
I do not recall.
Okay. Yeah, it says about a week after the fire. So at that time, you would not have been the county judge. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And just for the record, I do practice in your court sometimes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I have in the past, and I have future court dates scheduled in your court as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Judge Harden, can you tell us how you learned about the article that was going to be published?
How I learned about the article that was going to be published. I was contacted by Miss Julie Chang and asked if she could come to Mason to do a follow-up article on the courthouse.
Okay. And do you know about when that happened?
I'm guessing about 2 months ago. I don't know a specific date.
And you said it was a follow-up article. So what was the previous article that was published?
Well, I can't direct you to any particular article. TAC has been documenting the progress of the courthouse restoration. And I know that this is not the first time that they have been in Mason County collecting information for articles.
Okay. And who else did TAC interview or contact that you have personal knowledge of about the article?
In this particular case, I know that they were reaching out to Judge Rob Hoffman as well as former or retired Treasurer Polly McMillan.
And did the reporter have an outline or a number of people that she wanted to contact when you met with her, or did you provide that information to her?
The only two people that I thought she would be contacting was Judge Hoffman and Polly McMillan.
And did she come to Mason to interview you for the article?
Yes.
And there are some pictures contained in the article. Did she take some of those pictures?
The only picture that I can verify, its origination is the picture on page 26 of the actual publication. And that's a picture of me. And she did not take that picture. I do not know the origin of the other pictures.
All right. Do you know where she got the picture that shows that the courthouse was burning? Where the picture that appears in the article, embedded in the article, where it shows the courthouse was burning, that says Credit Mason County?
I do not know where she specifically received that picture, no.
Okay. And were you able to preview the article before it was published?
I was.
And did she indicate what date it would be published?
It was my understanding that she wanted it to be in the fall publication.
So would this be the fall publication that the article came out in, Judge?
I would assume, but I am honestly not aware of their publication cycle.
And in regard to the publication is from the Texas Association of Counties, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And who receives that publication?
To my knowledge, the members of the association and others who request a copy.
And is the publication online?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it also in print?
I've not received a printed copy, but I have received the electronic copy of this publication, yes.
And to your knowledge, does the electronic copy go to, as you stated, the membership, county employees, that kind of thing?
I would assume that it does.
And Judge, we have briefly met about this part of the case that Mr. Neal referenced on the cost for rebuilding the courthouse. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you referred the district attorney's office to Dave Stotch. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you know about how many tours have been conducted of the courthouse in regard to media access, that kind of thing?
I could not give even a range of how many. Not every courthouse tour goes through this office's authority, so I cannot answer that question definitively, no.
Okay. Have you taken any people on a tour of the courthouse rebuild?
Not on my own. I've always had permission from the project superintendent, but yes, I have been on tours with others.
And did some of those tours include members from the Texas Association of County that were helping with funding and the rebuild of the courthouse?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever participated in a tour given to law enforcement?
No.
A tour given to the state fire marshal's office?
No.
Or a tour given to the district attorney's office?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Judge, a couple of follow-up questions, if I may.
Good.
Thank you. Judge Harden, you mentioned earlier an organization of people who collected funds and keep track of who donates, etc. Do you know what that organization's name is?
It's the Mason County Friends of the Courthouse.
And do you know any of the people who are a member of that group?
Yes.
Just off the top of your head, could you tell us who those people are? And I understand you may not know the entire list, but just who you know.
Sure. Curtis Donaldson, Randy Cruzy, Connie Stockbridge, Chris Hicks, Homer Sanchez, Bobby McMillan, those are the members who come to mind immediately.
Okay, thank you. As county judge, does your office or do you have access to documentation regarding the budget for the restoration of the courthouse?
I have access to it. Yes, I'm not keeper of it.
Okay. And in those documentation, is there a line item budget of where the money is coming from?
Yes, we have a special budget in our county budget specifically for the courthouse rebuild project.
Okay. And within that budget, is it go into detail on who donates what money, as in certain individuals?
No, sir.
Okay. And then regarding the Texas Association of Counties publication, you mentioned that there was an online version. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And does one have to be have you viewed that online version?
I have.
Does one have to be a member of the Texas Association of Counties to access that publication?
I am unaware of that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you have to put in a password to access the article?
I did not have to
put
in a password, no.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Just a couple of brief follow-ups. The special budget, Judge, that you mentioned is part of the courthouse rebuild. Is that budget available online for the public to view?
Our Mason County budget is online, yes.
Okay, and that special budget is contained within the county's budget?
That is correct.
Okay. And when donations are made to the county from the Friends of the Courthouse, does the County Commissioners Court accept those donations at an official meeting of the County Commissioners Court?
Yes.
And are those minutes available online as well?
Our minutes are available online, yes.
And those are all public records, is that right, Judge?
Yes.
And in regard to Mr. Stotch, would you briefly tell us what his role is in the courthouse rebuild?
Sure. Mr. David Stouch is head of CPM Texas, and he was hired to be our project manager. He is the agent representing Mason County in the courthouse rebuild project.
And so in that effort, is he the person that oversees the funds and the funds that are coming in and reports to you or the Commissioner's Court and the Friends of the Courthouse about how the project is progressing financially?
Yes, he is the one person who has a firm understanding of the funding from the Friends of the Courthouse, from Texas Association of Counties Risk Management Pool, which is our insurance, the Texas Historical Commission.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions.
Nothing further for Judge Harden, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge Harden. Additional witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Judge Bearden.
Judge Bearden, please raise your right hand. In the matter before the court, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Judge. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Jerry Bearden.
And Judge Bearden, how well are you currently employed?
No, I'm not. I'm currently ranching for a living now.
All right. And before, well, are you retired?
That's correct. I retired after serving 20 years as county judge in Mason County.
Okay. And at the time of this fire, were you Mason County judge?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall speaking to a Julie Chang for an article that has been published in the Texas Association of Counties?
You're talking about this recent article?
Yes, Your Honor.
No, I did not speak to her.
Okay. Have you seen the article that we're speaking about today?
Yes, I received a copy of it yesterday.
And are you aware that there are quotes from you in that article?
I am.
Okay. And are you saying that you did not give her those quotes?
Excuse me, what is your question?
Are you saying that you did not give her those quotes?
No, I did not say that. She got those quotes from previous interviews.
Okay. But not for this article. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The article states that the county judges met with the commissioners, I believe it says a week after the fire. Do you recall that meeting?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And are you aware of who's in charge of keeping track of the funding for the county attorney or for the county judge's office?
The Treasurer's Department.
Okay. And who is the head of the Treasurer's Department?
Well, at that time, Polly McMillan was our elected treasurer.
Okay. Is she still the elected treasurer?
No, Ms. McMillan retired the same time I did.
Okay. And you have seen the article. Are you aware that there are quotes in there pertaining to the origination of the fire in the courthouse?
Yes, I am.
And do you know who gave those quotes regarding the origination of the fire in the courthouse?
You are talking about the part where I was quoted, where when you back up, and would you like for me to give you some history on those quotes?
Sure, absolutely, please.
Okay. Around 10 p.m. the night of February the 4th, 2021, I received a call from dispatch office concerning a fire at a residence. At that time, I was serving as emergency management coordinator for Mason County, so I often responded to fires. And when I did this, I was getting dressed to come to town, and the dispatch called me again and said that the courthouse was on fire. There were flames coming out of the second-story window up in the district judge's office area. So I live about 4 miles from the courthouse. By the time I got here, the roof was engulfed in flames, and so was the cupola. And as I went around to the south side of the courthouse, I could see the flames coming out of this area here. So I assumed that the fire was upstairs, because at this time there were no flames coming out of the offices below the district judge or adult probation offices.
Okay. The article states that fire investigators determined the fire began in Judge Hoffman's office. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware of what they quoted, yes, but as far as my concerns are, I had no idea where it started.
Okay. And my question then is, are you the one, or did you give that quote to Ms. Chang for this article?
Yes.
Okay. It also says that just 12 hours before the fire that you had received restoration plans for the courthouse in the mail. Do you recall that?
Yes, it's not exactly correct in that quote because we were working with our architects at that time and the historical commission, and we were in our office over in the annex, and the FedEx truck drove up and delivered that afternoon the 100% completion plans for the restoration project of the Mason County Courthouse, which we had been working on for years.
Okay. And do you know if since then a copy of those plans have been handed over to law enforcement?
I have no knowledge of that.
Do you know if they have been handed over to the district attorney's office?
I have no knowledge of that either.
Okay. And then it does quote you in here as saying that nobody was hurt that night. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was there the whole time, really 48, 50 hours, and we were very careful in making sure that falling debris, tree limbs, things of this nature, no one was damaged or hurt by any of these incidents. And as far as I know of, no one was hurt.
Okay. And then do you recall, are you aware of this Mason County Friends of Courthouse group?
Yes, I am.
And do you know of any members other than those who Judge Hardin named who are a part of that group?
The only one, all of those members, as Judge Hardin named, were correct, except I believe Lee McMillan was also a member of that group.
Okay. And do you recall, you said these quotes from you were taken earlier. Do you recall about when they got these quotes from you?
As Judge Hardin said, the Texas Association of Counties has had an ongoing program, you might say, of keeping up with the restoration and rebuilding of the courthouse. And there were several times that I was interviewed by Ms. Chin and her assistants. We were interviewed, Judge Hardin and I were interviewed several times along with other people. So it was an ongoing process. And as far as a time or a date that this quote could have been taken, it's anywhere in the 2-year process until the time I retired. After I retired, I did attend a meeting in Round Rock, sponsored by the risk management group, to give a conversation and an update on the courthouse.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Judge Bearden, I have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you arrived at the courthouse fire, about how many people would you say were observing the fire from the area that Judge Hoffman described around the courthouse square?
When I got here, there weren't that many people. In fact, when I came into town, I was able to park on the north side of the courthouse. And at that time, some of our local fire departments were still involved in fighting the fire on the residence over here on the northeast side of town. But we had also issued calls to other volunteer fire departments, and we were arranging trucks in different areas to apply water to the courthouse, and to also work with law enforcement to work with traffic coming around the courthouse square to divert traffic and to keep people out of their way. At this time, people started arriving, more fire departments. We had multiple departments from Mason County, McCulloch County, all the surrounding counties. We had a very large fire truck arrive from Llano County, which was able to hook up on the south side of the square to our fire hydrants and they had what was called a large cannon, which was able to apply water up on the roof of the courthouse. But at this time, the fire was so far along that basically all it was a containment to try to avoid the fire from spreading to any of the businesses around the courthouse in the square.
Okay. And Judge, you were also, as you stated, the emergency management coordinator at that time. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so did you tone out other fire departments, or had that already happened, or did you give any orders concerning that?
Yeah, I talked to dispatch, and they had already had the request made by the Mason County Fire Chief to get these other fire departments to come in. One of the issues you run into when you are emergency management coordinator is that you are responsible for working with other fire departments that are there. But at this time, I deferred to our fire chief and let the fire departments handle most of the work with the fire.
And who was the fire chief at the time?
I believe it was Brandon Neese was the fire chief at the time.
And does Mason County have any fire investigators, arson investigators that are qualified as arson investigators that were at that fire at the time that the courthouse was burning?
I don't believe so.
And did you ever receive a briefing from any fire investigators about the origin of the fire in the courthouse?
Not about the origin. I did receive some briefing from some of the state officials, but not about the origin of the fire.
What about from any other law enforcement agency about the origin of the fire?
No, I did not receive any information from them either.
Okay, or the district attorney's office?
I did not receive anything from the district attorney's office.
And I'd like to go back to the renovation plan when you were the county judge. For purposes of the record, could you tell us about when the grant became available for the renovation of the Mason County Courthouse originally, and take us through a timeline of what the original renovation plan was?
I'll try to work with a timeline, but I'm not sure I can hit every date. But after several years of being elected and taking office in January 1, 2003, I was approached by several of our county elected officials, the former county clerk, Beatrice Longhenny, and again, Polly McMillan. And at that time, we were interested in seeing if we would be able to apply for the Texas historical grants to restore the Mason County Courthouse, because it had gone through many changes. They put new floors down, carpeting, things of this nature. So I went through the process of applying with the Texas Historical Commission to receive a grant to restore the courthouse to its original shape. And at this time, there was available about $10 million to do all the courthouses in the state of Texas that need to be restored. And you get on kind of a list or a pecking order. And I would go to Austin and testify before the Historical Commission. We worked our way up over the years. We finally qualified for an emergency grant. And in this emergency grant, we got a new roof put on. We also got paint job done on the outside, electrical work done on the inside because of the danger of, just the building itself. The ceiling tiles were coming loose and coming off. So we qualified for an emergency grant, did the process to pay for the grant. It paid, I believe, 50% of it, $600,000 that we took out in some notes. And after several years, we paid this off. Well, we kept pursuing the grant. And finally, during the rankings in the state of Texas, Mason County was ranked number 1 to qualify for a restoration grant. So the Commissioner's Court approved our application for this grant. And I believe that grant at that time was somewhere around $4.1 million to restore the county courthouse, which would have included also a particular monetary match by the county. So we went and we hired worked with our people that came in and worked with us, our architects. We did receive test plans, things of this nature. And then we were told, I believe in sometime around maybe December, January, November of 2020, that the restoration process would start soon after January 2021. So we were looking for a place to move all our offices out, and Treasurer McMillan and I discovered the building across the street, which is now the annex, and we were able to purchase this building. And in December, we went to hire a company to come in and move all of our records and things out here into the other building after the work had been done to put in new floors, wiring, things of this nature for the annex. This company called me a couple of days before we were ready to move and said all his employees had COVID and couldn't help us. So we put a call out to all of our employees, road hands, everybody, and the whole volunteers, and people came in and helped us move our records, our electrical equipment, everything that we could except furnishings across the street to the annex. And at that time, then we were going to begin the courthouse restoration project, which wound up being a construction project.
Thank you, Judge. So that, to be clear for the record, all of the records in the courthouse, some of the furniture, furnishings, things like that were out of the courthouse in December of 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Neal asked you about a renovation plan that was delivered. What is a renovation plan?
Okay, it's actually what it was. It was a restoration plan, and it's a very detailed plan that is done by investigators that are working with their paint specialists. They were structure specialists. They were specialists to look at the integrity of the walls of the courthouse, the possibilities of going to the restoration process, and these plans were drawn up through our architects' firm, a firm that we had worked with the Historical Commission to come in and make the set of plans so we would be able to restore the courthouse to its original 1909 look.
Okay. And so it's actual documents that are delivered, and does it look like architectural plans, or how would you describe the actual documents or plans?
The actual document, it'd be many, many pages. It was in a roll-up box. It's probably 3 foot by 18 inches in diameter, and each plan shows each office, each page, the colors. It has the diameters, the dimensions of each room, the dimension of the courthouse, the type of materials that are required to historically restore the courthouse.
And are those plans something that the public can access?
Yes, they can.
And do those plans have any specific breakdown for the cost for each item?
No, now these plans did not have any particular costs.
And you talked about being on a update panel, I guess, in Round Rock. Is that correct, Judge?
That's correct.
And who else was on that panel?
Judge Harden. I don't know. I believe she was there too. There were a couple of other individuals, but mainly they were Texas Association of County Peoples that interviewed us. This was it's an annual meeting of the group that does the this type of projects for the Texas Association of Counties, and we were invited to speak on the panel.
Okay.
Many of the questions they asked us was also about the funding and how to pay for this.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge Bearden.
Thank you.
Additional witnesses?
No, Your Honor. None from the defense.
Ms. Allswede?
No, Judge, we don't have any witnesses.
Argument?
Yes, Your Honor. Defendant moves for continuance of this case. It's set for trial starting November 13th, which is next Monday. As the court has heard, there's new discovery, one from eyewitnesses detailing, at least in part, the origination of the fire, which is different from what was given to us by the district attorney's office and the Mason County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Fire Marshal's office, which came from the district attorney's office with regards to the origination of the fire. Second of all, Your Honor, if the court will recall, we did have a motion for discovery. I believe it was back in September, where we did request all documents in the possession of the district attorney's office or an arm of the state, which regarding finances, regarding the finances to rebuild the courthouse, et cetera. I think it's very pertinent to have the information on, since the county was already looking to restore the courthouse, how much money it was going to cost to restore the courthouse versus what they're paying now. The article also mentions that there's going to be additions to the courthouse, such as the sprinkler systems and TV. And so since this case is going to go into damages, I think it's important to know what was in the courthouse at the time and then what's being added. Is there better equipment, better materials that are being used? Like, what were the damages versus what is actually being done to the courthouse now, to figure out what damages actually may be. So we're still asking for that information. I understand from Ms. Allswede's questions that some of those documents may be available to the public. However, this is the first time defense is hearing about them, so we would have no knowledge to be able to access those documents. Now that we can access some of them, I'm not sure all of them are online, but now that we can, we'll have our investigators go through and see what we can find. But Your Honor, again, we're 3 days away from the start of trial and just getting this information. So we're asking for a continuance. Additionally, Your Honor, some of the comments that were made or with regard to the evidence are by state and county officials from the County of Mason. The testimony shows that this article is available to the public. Our investigator is currently going through to see if any members of the public, particularly in Brady, where members of the jury, where the jury pool has already been selected, but checking to see if anyone from there could possibly be tainted by these comments that were made to the public just on the eve of trial. Additionally, Your Honor, we need to investigate this Friends of the Mason County Courthouse to see if any of those members are family or members of that jury pool in Brady. The article does state that not everyone is from Mason who has given money to the county or to the Texas Association of Counties for the rebuild of this courthouse. Defendant has constitutional rights to a fair trial and impartial jury and discovery under 39.14 and due process. And our argument is all of those would be violated unless the defense is given adequate time to research these matters and investigate. The defense does have a duty to investigate these matters before we go to trial. So we're asking for continuance.
Allsweede.
Your Honor, the state informed the defense about this article, and we learned about it at the same time that we sent it to the defense. So the state had no knowledge that this article was coming out or the information contained in the article. So as soon as we learned about it, we forwarded it to Mr. Neal and Ms. Neal. In regard to the specific numbered paragraph in the defense's motion for continuance, there are, I believe, 7 allegations in paragraph 7. And those allegations contain information that is more inculpatory information that is contained in the article than exculpatory information. The State Fire Marshal's Office will be the investigating agency that testifies about the origin of the fire, and they will be available at trial to testify about those things. There obviously are going to be a large number of witnesses that are not going to be called in this case that may have been eyewitnesses that night, but the state has the burden of proof, and the state will be relying on the State Fire Marshal's Office investigators to testify about the origin of the fire, although any number of witnesses in this matter and other witnesses that were on the courthouse square that night also may have their opinions. There's a difference between what the burden of proof is for the state and what the evidence will be actually held at trial, and the state has provided all of the evidence to the defense about that origin of the fire that the state will be relying on. So the first 4 allegations in paragraph 7 are largely addressing guilt-innocence issues at the trial, and the state has provided the discovery that the defense needs in order to proceed forward with this case, so this case is not continued. In regard to allegations 5, 6, and 7, those allegations are about the cost and about the funding of the courthouse. Those would largely be punishment allegations. The state has made available and has designated Dave Stotch from CPM as a witness in that regard, and the defense has subpoena power as well to be able to investigate those issues. The state did provide the defense in conjunction with the fire marshal's report, which has the TAC insurance policy information that contains some of the information that Mr. Neal has been requesting. So I think, Judge, when it boils down to, looking at the materiality of these allegations, the state would argue that these allegations and the request and the specific items mentioned in paragraph 7 are not material to the overall determination of guilt or punishment in light of the evidence in this case. And Judge, also, if you want me to keep going on paragraph number 8, of the defense's motion, that paragraph is talking about possession of the state. And the state would remind the court, in your honor at this time, that possession of the state contemplates law enforcement agencies and members of the prosecution team, which would be the district attorney's office in this case. Judicial officials are not part of the state in this case or in any other case, and I'm not aware of any of members of the judiciary that have been lumped into being in possession of the state. So the state has complied with Article 3914 in that regard. In paragraph number 10 of the defense's motion, I'm talking about damage to the jury pool. I think the only way to find out if there's damage done to the jury pool is to try to pick a jury in this case, which is scheduled on Monday, and the state is ready to proceed in that regard. In addition, to the quotes and comments in the article mentioned in paragraph number 11 of the defense's motion, the witnesses were available to testify to the defense today and will be available throughout the course of the trial, and they have been subpoenaed to be at that trial so that the defense can continue to develop those comments if it so chooses to do so. So, Your Honor, the state is ready for trial, and we would ask that the motion for continuance be denied at this time.
Anything else, Mr. Neal?
Yes, Your Honor, just a brief rebuttal. I understand the state is saying that they provided some of the evidence to them, especially the evidence that they plan to go on. However, there is contradictory evidence. And just because they don't want to rely on that doesn't mean the defense doesn't. We have a duty to investigate this. This is new information coming out that the defense may rely on, and we need to be able to investigate this further. Can
you elaborate on the contradictory evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. So in this article, and according to the testimony that you heard today, the fire originated in Judge Rob Hoffman's office, or according to Judge Hoffman, in his office suite. According to and Judge Hoffman had suspicions and apparently notified law enforcement of his suspicions, but law enforcement, there's nothing in the discovery that I've seen stating that Judge Hoffman relayed those suspicions to law enforcement. I'm not saying that it's not true, but I need to investigate that further. Number two, the state fire marshal's report, to my understanding, is inconclusive as to where the actual fire started. Now, this is in contradiction to eyewitness testimony from this article stating where the fire actually started. I think it's important to know that, especially if the trained investigators from the fire marshal's office and investigators who took statements and interviewed several people from there were unable to determine the origination of the fire. I think the defense needs to investigate that further as well. And then again, there's also, as I spoke of at the beginning, and Ms. Allsweet got to, the damages issue. We don't have all the information on that. I understand that I can't remember his name, Stouch, I believe, will be available at trial to testify, but I think it's important that we have the information on the cost that was going to be done for the restoration of the courthouse versus what is being, or what has been spent, or what's going to be spent on the courthouse now. So we're able to figure out the difference in those, and if anything is extra that would not be attributable to Mr. Miller, should there be a conviction against him, Your Honor, should we get to punishment on him. And again, 3 days we've had this article now for about a week. As I mentioned, Miss Neal and I were both out sick with COVID when we received it. But basically 10 days before trial is not enough time to track down these leads, interview all the witnesses necessary, and get the information. So we are asking for a continuance.
Ms. Allsweet?
Judge, I'll rely on the arguments that I previously made.
Frankly, I'm torn, counsel. The county's already spent a lot of money and a lot of preparation, and the defense and the state have both geared up significantly for this trial. But that being said, I don't want to try it twice because of allegations that there was information that was or was not turned over to law enforcement and wasn't put in a report, or I guess conflicts in the potential location that originated with the fire.
Judge, if I may say something.
You may.
Your Honor, the article was not within the control of the state or the defense in this case, and we understand, that we're going to have to make available witnesses so Mr. Neal can investigate those things, and we are certainly willing to work with Mr. Neal and Ms. Neal over the weekend to provide that information, if that would be enough time for them to get through those allegations. But I would just like to point out that I think that it was outside the control of the state or the defense in this case. And so we'd ask the court to take that into consideration when making its ruling.
Any comment, Mr. Neal?
I would agree with that. I don't believe Ms. Allsweet had anything to do with this article, and we certainly did not. But my comment is, I guess my comment is the issues still remain. That's my only comment.
It would make Penny very happy if you would like, subscribe, and leave us a comment.
All right, this time the court's going to grant the motion for continuance. I think we're safer putting it off a couple of months, and then we don't have to do this twice. What do your trial schedules look like in January or February?
Judge, I have a sexual assault of a child scheduled for January 3rd in the 198th. However, in speaking with the prosecution, it doesn't seem likely that it will go. So, we could set it then. And this one would take preference, I believe, as well. Although that gentleman has been in jail for almost 3 years as well. I'm wide open in February at this time.
Let me tell you, on my calendar, I'm wide open the week of January 8th and January 22nd.
Either of those weeks is fine with defense, Your Honor.
We concur, Judge. We're going to be available whenever the court sets this case for trial.
What's your preference?
My preference would be later in January. I think that we have jurors that have a hard time getting back into the swing of things after the holidays. And that would give them more time. In addition, Judge, although I can have an assistant DA and panel grand juries, we typically do our grand jury impanelment the 2 weeks prior to the 22nd.
All right, let's reset the Miller trial for January 22nd. It'll still be in McCulloch County. Let's plan on having the parties at the point of order, which I assume is still going to be the convention center at 8 a.m. And if we need another pretrial before then, just let me know.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
As to this is kind of moot at this point, but I'm not worried about all the contributions and the folks that may have donated. That could be handled easily at Ordar.
Yes,
I'm more concerned about the evidence that may or may not be contradictory. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Judge.